Yeah. It's organized, Attorney Brown.
Good morning, Mayor Davis and Commissioners. We'll request a motion to go into executive session for the discussion of potential and pending litigation, personnel, and personnel.
So move.
Second.
Was that Mr. Mason? Oh, it was the mayor. Yeah, I thought that was you.
Y'all said y'all were in a hurry, so I thought I'd
I make a
That
motion to
much of a-
approve.
Second.
You told me to act like it.
When have you ever listened to me?
Every day. Voting.
I hope this is a quick meeting.
It will be.
No, not me. That'd be hot sun down there drinking. That'd be hot sun down there drinking the Red Bulls.
Yeah.
That motion carries with Mr. Dennis Williams and Mr. Franum out.
Chair recognizes Attorney Brown.
Thank you, Mayor Davis. Commissioners, we'll request a motion to execute the closed meeting affidavit.
So be it.
Second.
That was a second from the Commissioner from the 7th, Madam Clerk. Motion
that
from
was
the Mayor
Mr.
Pro Tem.
Okay.
Got a motion and a second. Voting.
Mr. Garrett and Ms. McKnight, they're out. Oh, Mr. Clark.
Mr. Garrett is there.
I mean, Mr. Clark.
He never learned how to break dance, so he doesn't know how to push the button. Push the button.
That motion carries with Ms. McKnight out.
Thanks. Commissioner from the 1st, he don't know nothing about that. Chair recognizes the attorney for the reading of a motion.
Mayor Davis, Commissioners, will request a motion to adopt a resolution authorizing the settlement of all claims by Jesse Beard Jr. in the aggregate amount of $25,000 payable as follows to Jesse Beard Jr. and the Halt Law Group as his attorney, further authorizing the administrator to disperse this amount of $25,000, waiving Augusta, Georgia Code of Ordinances sections in conflict for this instance only and for other purposes.
Commissioner from the 7th.
So moved.
Second.
Voting.
It's unanimous.
Mayor Davis will request a second motion to adopt a resolution authorizing the settlement of all claims for Ephraim Barrett in the aggregate amount of $18,000 payable as follows. Ephraim Barrett and the Halt Law Group as his attorney, further authorizing the administrator to disperse the amount of $18,000, waiving Augusta, Georgia Code of Ordinances sections in conflict for this instance only and for other purposes.
So moved.
Second.
Voting.
Mr. Dennis Williams and Mr. Clark? He's out. Okay.
Attorney Brown, I believe that that's all the business.
That
before us.
motion carries with Mr. Clark out.
I'm sorry, Madam Clerk.
Yes, sir, Mayor Davis, there are no further motions today.
Okay. Madam Clerk, I do apologize.
Yes, sir.
All right.
All right. I'd like to call Public Services to order. Madam Clerk, do we have any additions or deletions to the agenda, please?
No, sir.
Okay. If there's no questions from the body or my colleagues, we'd like to consent agenda items number 5, 6, 7, and 9. 5, 6, 7, and 9.
So moved.
Got a
Second.
motion and a second. Voting, please. And Commissioner 10 is out.
Okay, he said go ahead. Clark's out. Do it. That motion carries with Mr. Clark out.
Okay. We can go to agenda item number 1, please.
Okay, Ms. Walton?
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. Our first item is a new location, alcohol number 22-58. It's a request by Jackie Nordine Jr. for a retail package, liquor, beer, and wine license to be used in connection with One-Eyed Jack's Augusta LLC, located at 2009 Larissa Road. This application has been approved by the Sheriff's Office and Planning and Development. Do we have any objectors to this alcohol petition?
None noted. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Jackie Nordine Jr., 157 Lakewood Drive, Keysville, Georgia, 30816.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second. Got a motion and a second. Voting, please. Commissioner.
It's unanimous.
Agenda item number 2, please.
The next item is an extension, alcohol number 22-14-2. It's a request by Ashaben Patel for an extension on the retail package liquor, beer, and wine license to be used in connection with Liquor World located at 2184 Gordon Highway. This application was approved by the Sheriff's Department and Planning and Development. Ms. Patel is asking for an extension due to not being able to find engineers and material at this time.
Okay. Is there anyone objecting to this? None noted. State your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Asa Patel and address is 2184 Gordon Highway.
Your home address, please.
7304 Martin Court.
Rest of it, Augusta. Where's
Augusta, Georgia, Evans.
Evans 30809?
Yes, sir.
Evans 30809. Okay. Can I get a motion to approve, please? Motion to approve. Second. Got a motion and a second. Voting, please.
It's unanimous.
Agenda item number 3, please.
This is a request by Leslie Watkins for a massage operator's license to be used in connection with These Hands Massage and Body Work located at 1 George C. Wilson Court, Suite A. This application has been approved by the Sheriff's Department and Planning and Development. Ms.
Now,
Watkins, are you in the chamber?
is this the third time she hasn't been?
She had an emergency in Texas, the reason she was not here before, and one time she was actually not put on the agenda.
Okay. So, want to move to the full commission with no recommendation?
Please.
Okay. Can I get a motion to that effect, please? Got a motion and a second to move to the full commission without a recommendation. Voting, please.
Thank you.
It's unanimous.
Agenda item number 4, please.
Item number 4 is a presentation by Mr. Larry Freeman regarding the removal of a group home at 1710 Fairwood Court, Augusta.
Mr. Freeman, if you could come forward to one of the podiums. And if you could state your name and address for the record, and then once you're done with that, you'll have 5 minutes, sir.
Larry Wayne Freeman, 1709 Fairwood Drive, Augusta, Georgia, 30909.
Okay, you have 5 minutes, sir.
I'd like to make one correction. It's not exactly Forest Hill, it's Forest Estate subdivision. The Forest Estate subdivision has been there since 1969, and it's been enhanced by the owners of the homes there for many years. Even now, they're getting calls from people attempting to buy the property that in that area. The Forest Hill Estate has access to going along the Gordon Highway. It has access along Bobby Jones to the airport. It has access to I-20, and it also has access to Riceboro Road leading into the medical district. In addition, I sent a letter to the commissioners. The north leg, Jackson Road, is the connection between the Gordon Highway and Washington Road. It is a very important area, very important corridor that is used by the city. Also in this area, you have the Augusta Mall, Coca-Cola. You have the Stars and Stripes, bowling alley, the post office, as well as Walmart. Recently, there has been a rash of events that have occurred at 1710 Fairwood Court, the house directly behind me. In the last 12 months, the fire department has come by, the marshal department has come by to correct the trash that's in the area. The fire department had to put out a fire. DFACS had to come and take the children out of their house. And recently there has been a police shooting, which I've also sent that email to the commission. It continues to go on. It's a threat to those that dwell there. The children are parading up and down the street, and it appears to be a group home. If it's so, it was never approved by the community. No one knows about it. All they know, the children just keep coming. They are when the DFACS put the children out recently, the next day, more children were put into it. We just had a shooting 10 days ago or so. The children were put out. Now there's another group of children there. So if it's not a group home, what is it? So we ask that whatever home it is, or he's trying to do, we ask that it be removed. And not only that, we ask that a moratorium be established in the neighborhood for Section 8 dwellers. Not that we have any animosity toward those, but we just don't want them there because it doesn't do a good look for that community. The mall, all the business in the area are within walking distance. Children who are unemployed, children who are not only unemployed, who are given the mischief with enough time on their hand, would soon close the mall. They would soon close Walmart, Coca-Cola, and any other plant. Luckily, so far, none of the businesses in the area have heard about the shooting that I know of. I'm sure if they had heard about the shooting that had occurred, I'm sure you commissioners would have also heard about it. The shooting also shot in some people's cars and the bullets also went into some people's houses. So their lives and children were at stake. Since this has occurred, and I'm going to end now, 2 people have decided to move. But the Forest Hill subdivision is in Midtown. It's in a great location. And the people that live there in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, my neighbor's 97 years old. They're well established. They're law-abiding citizens, especially around that age.
Okay.
Anyway, I am done.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Thank you for bringing this to our attention for sure. We got some questions. Don't move. I wouldn't go too far. Commissioner Son.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Mr. Freeman. What makes I think you might have said this. You believe that this is a group home?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay. I think we got somebody from code enforcement in the back. You can ask them to come up in the meantime, but I'll ask them another question in the meantime. Sure. How long do you think it's been a group home, if it happens to be a group? Let's entertain your belief for a moment. How long do you think it's been a group home?
This has been going on for 12 months or less.
Mm. And you're also saying that DFACS are exchanging kids in and out for being a nuisance to the neighborhood?
I don't think DFACS is exchanging the children. DFACS came and removed the children once. Mm-hmm. I don't think DFACS has been informed again about the shooting. Otherwise, I think DFACS probably would have pulled the kids that are there now out.
How many kids do you believe actually are in the home?
Before the shooting, when DFACS arrived, there was 6 to 8 inside of a 3-bedroom home.
Okay. Can I ask Mr. Widener a question around this? Mr. Widener, just for the sake of this conversation, let's entertain this as a group home for a moment. wouldn't it, if it was a group home, wouldn't it have to be approved?
Yes, it would. A group home would have to be approved by planning and development.
Well, can you, for this commission, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, I think it's maybe you, to see, can you check and see, does it take the address and see by next week and let us know at the commission level, is this actually a group home and has it been cleared to be a group home?
Yes, sir, we can. Is it 1710?
1710.
Yes.
Okay, that's all it,
It's 1710 court, because the number, the drive and the court have the same number.
Fairwood Court.
Yes, sir. And the last thing code enforcement had on it, I just checked while I was in the back. We just had a nuisance case back in 2021 for trash and debris. But anything in reference to like a group home or anything, this is the first time I heard, but we can check on it.
okay. Does you have a relationship with DFAX to try to see, do they view this as being a group home, if it's possibly a group home?
Yes, sir. I can check.
And so we'll notice by next Tuesday?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you, sir.
You will.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, sir.
Okay, absolutely. Commissioner Clark?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask Mr. Freeman this question, please.
Sure.
You stated that DFAX had removed several children from that home. What were the ages of those children? Could you make a guesstimate?
A guesstimate between 14 to 18 years of age.
Okay, and you said the next day more children appeared at the home. Is that correct?
Yes, the next day or no later than 2 days later.
Were they
Now-
different? Were they different children?
Yes, now they are somewhere in their 20s.
Wow.
They're 24 and under. The police report that I sent you shows you the current people that are in the home now. Each home has a caregiver. As I understand it now, the caregiver, if the ages are between 20 and 24, the oldest caregiver is 24, which pushed them all in the same age bracket. And before, when the kids were 14 to 17, they had a guy who was in his 40s, but he was disabled, and he used to walk the neighborhood asking for money. He asked me for 75 cents. So as he went to the store.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Freeman. I don't have any other
Okay.
questions.
Commissioner Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This question is for Mr. Widener. How you doing, sir?
Doing well.
Good. Question for you. Are there any ordinances or any processes on the book to deal with situations like this? This is strikingly similar to a situation that you and I had been in communication about in the Harrisburg area. Two different, one seems like there's something that's not approved going on, but at the end of the day, it seems like there's some nuisances happening that is attracting law enforcement concerns. What on the book do we have to be able to address these issues rapidly and effectively? Because from what I understand, we are addressing them in a way, but it's not as effective as it possibly could be. So what do we have on the book, if I'm mistaken?
Thank you. Well, of course, we have our nuisance ordinance to be able to address the trash and debris that's outside. But also, our zoning ordinance doesn't even allow for a group home to be located in that particular zone. They would have to go through the planning commission to get that approved anyway. So we do have ordinances on the books that will address this exact instance and what he's going through with that property.
But if we take the whole group home conversation out and just focus on the nuisance part in itself, we said we had something on the books. We had a report from the property. I imagine it was a 311 call in or something like that about the trash on the property and things of that nature. If they go out and fix the trash, everything goes away. But if you come back and get another complaint within a week or so, it seems though that the city is just bouncing back. We go out and we slap somebody on the wrist, go back, and we just keep doing it. Like, is there something we need to be tightening up, or is this a question that we may need to hold until we get more information next week?
Yeah, I think we need to get more information, but I will say that a few months ago, maybe more than a few months ago, myself, along with Director Delaney, spoke about creating something that will address repeat offenders. So we don't have it all figured out at this point, but that is a conversation that we could have later on.
Okay, that's good to know because I do think that a lot of what we deal with, I know we get calls all the time from what seems to be repeat offenders. So that's good news to hear. But I'm just interested in hearing like what's going on in this situation. So I guess I'll just hold any other questions until next Tuesday.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions or comments? All right, can I get a motion for an update on the home at 1710 Fairwood Court, Augusta, Georgia 30909 next Tuesday?
Motion for an update concerning this matter for Tuesday.
So move, second.
All right, got a motion and a second. Voting, please.
It's unanimous.
Agenda item number 8, please.
Item 8 is discuss and receive a report from the Planning and Development Code Enforcement Department relative to 2529 Dover Street property.
Commissioner Hassan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, to my colleagues, first thing matter, if you notice in putting this on the agenda, I asked for Director Delaney to come and give us a broad conversation on this. And to my colleague, Commissioner Johnson's question just now, whether she's going to be coming back to us at the next committee cycle, because we do believe around these kinds of issues, we have some code issues that we need to revise or create. We have some issues also about the court system could be an asset to us in this process, and just enforcement in general. So the full conversation that I would like to have around this, I'm gonna ask this committee to push that back until I'm gonna put it back on the agenda for the next committee cycle. However, I am expecting at this particular time an update about a timeline for this particular property at 2529 in terms of when the owner of the property work schedule in terms of getting some things done. And that's to Mr. Wyden, if you don't mind,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Do I need to talk about the history of this case or just a timeline from the owner?
What I think the owner was supposed to be giving you a timeline, and I think this may be the owner here, if I'm not mistaken.
It is.
To tell you when what are their work schedules are going to be to complete the work, because as they've said, for the last, we got in our books, we got from February up until now some back and forth in terms of code enforcement officer, Mr. Wyden in particular, about doing some things, but it's being done at such a pace where 3 or 4 homes has been built and the duplex is yet to be complete. Obviously, there's some challenges there, but the neighbors and the rest of that neighborhood is concerned about what is being done at a snail's pace, and they feel that their property is threatened as a result of that. So that's what we're asking, and Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, the owner, feel free to speak at your discretion, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, if the owner, or can you state your name and address for the record? And then if you want to answer, kind of
James Jones.
your address?
My address is 799 Bates Road, Waynesboro, Georgia.
Okay. Commissioner Hassan?
Yes, Mr. Jones, as you can see, you're probably aware of, because I think code enforcement has been engaging with you, and what we want right now is a timeline about the body of work and potential completion of this project.
So basically, in a nutshell, the property is moving along. We've had several issues with theft in the area.
You stay at the mic. Stay at the mic. Thank you.
Several issues with theft. The project was initially all new plumbing, wiring, HVAC and stuff was installed into the property. Someone came in and took that from the property, which slowed the timeline down a lot. Right now, I met with code enforcement and the head is Mr. Masters the head inspector? Building official about approximately 2 weeks ago to look over the project to make sure that everything was as it should be. Mr. Masters made a recommendation of a couple of things that he wanted to see changed. That has since been done with the exception of one thing that will be done tomorrow or Thursday. And the inspections have been called in for the rough inspections on that project.
So what is your timeline for completion? You have a timeline on that?
Once the rough inspections are passed, then you're probably talking about a month and a half, 2 months to completion at that point.
And just for my colleagues, and to your point about you had some thefts on the property, I just want to say with the record, like I said, 3 or 4 houses has been built in the same time. And I don't mean they haven't had some challenges, but 3 or 4 houses has been built at the same time in that neighborhood. And so the neighborhood is just complaining about it, and I'm hoping that everything goes well for you, pass those inspections so you can proceed and get this project complete.
Well, with this project, you can't compare it to a new construction. This project entails some structural engineering before were able to even start. I'm going to rewind a little bit. The property initially, when I purchased the property, was already in code enforcement. They already had a case on it and so on and so forth. Before I was even allowed to get a permit for this property, I had to go through numerous steps to even get to a permit stage. So once I got to that stage, I had to get structural engineers. I had to get all these different things that you wouldn't normally have to have with a new construction house. I had to get that stuff done prior to. Once the permit was issued, once again I said COVID came into play. We had a lot of issues where we couldn't get material, we couldn't get things done, and so on and so forth. The biggest thing is I'm an investor. I don't invest in anything that I don't complete. I've been doing it in the city for 18 years, since 2004. My projects get completed. It's been several issues with this project that has slowed the project down, but you cannot by any means compare it to new construction.
Well, let me say this here, and I'm going to leave it alone. I'm not trying to make a direct comparison, but when I say 4 houses, I'm not talking about 4 houses at one time. I'm talking about one after the other.
Well,
one after. That's my position.
Well,
one after the other. I've been through there. I've looked at it, and I'm not trying to make a comparison. I'm just saying over that period of time, Tim Wilson has built 4 houses independent of each other. And so the neighborhood is just concerned about that, and we get the time now. Mr. Chairman, I'm through with it.
I'd like to have one other thing to say. If you want to talk about time,
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
Chairman, I'm through with it.
I have other properties.
Mr. Chairman, I'm through
Sir,
with it.
let him finish, and then we'll move on. Just let him finish.
I have other properties in the neighborhood. I have one particular duplex in the same neighborhood that the city owns 2 duplexes right across the street, and another abandoned property is right beside it. They encircle my project, my one property that I have completely renovated, permitted, and everything. So you want to talk about the fact that I'm not doing my stuff in a timely manner. The city has owned this property for 18 years. The city has owned it. They blocked me from buying it in 2004. I have pictures. It's burned out. It's burned out. The kids can walk in and out. At least my stuff is secure. Nobody can go in and out.
Okay.
Kids can go into this property right now, fall through the floor or whatever else. The city owns this property, not me.
All right.
So it's the same neighborhood. So my thing is hold me to the same standard you hold yourself.
Thank you, sir. All right. Can I get a motion to receive his information? Thank you. Voting.
Is that it?
It's unanimous.
All right. Concludes public services. Thank you, committee.
Are we ready for public safety?
We will be. Just give me a minute, sir.
Okay.
Yep. We are, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Call public safety to order. Is there any addition or deletions from the agenda?
No, sir.
Thank you. With the committee's approval, I'd like to consent item 1 and 2.
So moved.
Second.
What about 3?
I don't see a 3. We have a motion and a second. Voting, please.
It's unanimous.
Thank you. With no further business before public safety, I call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, you're welcome for administrative services.
Yes, sir.
Okay. The administrative services is now in session. Are there any additions or deletions?
No, sir.
Okay. First, I'd like to identify item number 3, the bid protest. It has been resolved, and so we want to remove it from the agenda. We'd like to consent item number 1, item number 2, item number 5, item number 6, and item number 7, if that's okay with the committee.
So moved.
I got a question about 7.
All right, 7 is still on the agenda.
Okay. So moved with removing number 3.
And what about the consent, the rest of them?
That's, yep.
So that's 1, 2, moving number 3, 5, and 6. Is that correct, Ms. Bonner?
Yes, sir.
Motion?
Mr. Vernon, we need a second, sir.
Second.
We're voting. Okay. You got it. You got it. It's unanimous.
Ms. Bonner?
I just have one question about number 7, sir.
Well, we're going to go number 4 right at this
You gonna
time.
do number 4 first?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Ms. Bonner, number 4.
Item number 4 is a motion to approve HCD's request for 50/50 partnership with Hornet Habitat 3 LLC to identify, develop up to 3 lots of single-family housing, new construction within the Laney Walker Bethlehem area.
Yes, sir, thank you. Director Welcher, my question here is is this Habitat Homes you're building here?
No, sir.
Okay. Have we done business with them before?
No, sir.
This company here?
No, sir.
Okay, we don't have anything here to look at what they've done historically then. That's why I was thinking this is a brand-new company. It'll give us some idea of their body of work to make this kind of decision. And I don't see any particular address where you're going to build that either.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think honestly you'll be very prepared. I mean, we could bring back information next week, or if you want to move back to next committee, we'd be more than happy. This is definitely a reputable developer who has actually developed all over the southeast in the country. To be honest with you, they're actually more mature than some of our local developers from a standpoint of functionality from affordable housing and workforce. So if you're willing to, they've developed in several revitalization areas across the southeast. But if you would like, based on your question, have no problem. There's no timeline associated with this. So if you would like for us to push back to have the actual developer here to make a presentation, and/or if you would like for me to provide information, I can do that as well, no problems.
We'd rather do that and go back to the committee cycle because, like I say, you just mentioned a lot of the body of work of the company, but you have absolutely nothing in here about them as a new vendor.
Okay.
There's nothing in here at all. So we'll push it back to
Motion
the
to
next
send to the
committee
next
cycle.
committee cycle.
Second.
Third.
Voting, Ms. Bonner.
Yes, sir.
I'm trying, Ms. Bonner.
You got it. It's unanimous.
All right, Ms. Bonner, number 7, please.
Item 7 is a motion to approve the award of bid 22-166 Vernon Forest Park bathroom construction in the amount of $97,072 to Contract Management, Inc., utilizing recaptured SPLOST funds.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Bobby Williams.
Yes, sir. Where did this come from? Because we never discussed this before.
Good afternoon, Commissioner. Mayor, this is part of a series of bathroom renovations and new bathroom construction that was slated a few years back through Central Services. This is the last one to be done. It has been sitting on hold because they needed some additional funds, which we have recaptured from some SPLOST funds, and so we're just finishing up that project that was already underway.
So this is $97,000 of recaptured funds.
No, not completely. The project had $66,000 already available. The additional funding came from SPLOST to get to the $97,000.
So how long have we been sitting on $66,000?
Just for a couple of months. We had finished the rest of the renovations with the restrooms, and once that was done, this was the last one to be done.
Well, Mr. You through, Commissioner Williams?
I got another one coming.
Well, go ahead.
I got another one.
Go ahead, come on, go ahead.
But that's all right. You cut me off.
No, I didn't cut you. I was waiting for you.
No,
Actually,
man, that's go ahead. Go ahead.
when you say this is the final, because, you know, Big Oak is something that, you know, they heavily use that facility, and I was assuming that that would be, you know, Forest for sure. We want them to have that, but Big Oak has been on the list for, I know, conversation for a couple of years.
Yes, sir, and that's underway as well. The money for Big Oak is in SPLOST 8.
Okay. Okay. Anybody has any other questions? Can I get a motion, please?
Motion approved.
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner.
Second.
I'm sorry. You
Motion to approve, sir.
Second.
voting, Ms. Bonner.
We are.
Know where it came from.
That is
It's unanimous.
Ms. Bonner. That's it for administrative services.
Okay. Okay.
Ms. Bonner, I am ready when you are for
Yes,
engineering
sir.
services.
Give me a moment.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we'll go ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Bonner. I'd like to call engineering services to order. Are there any additions or deletions? Ms.
No,
Bonner?
sir. I don't have any. I'm sorry. Preoccupied.
All right. Let's go top to bottom on this one, please.
Engineering, discuss the concerns of residents from the Ellis Street relative to flooding of property from Calhoun Expressway.
All right. Commissioner Hassan, I believe this is your item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To put this item back on the agenda because, you know, some of us realized that several months ago, the residents of Ellis Street in that particular block, they were here voicing their concerns. And one of the things that came out of that, if I remember correctly, Dr. Malik was tasked to take a look at that. And I want to just let him give us a brief overview of his findings around the John C. Calhoun Expressway and the impact that on the property and what he thinks needs to be done there. And then we'll come back with the other part about the damage to the properties. But that's, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, that Dr. Malik give us a reminder of the update that he gave us.
Dr. Malik, if you'd come forward.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon.
Afternoon. What is the status of this item? I know we've discussed it a couple of times now, so.
Yes, sir. And as you know, engineering stated in the previous conversations, we look at this project or this area, and recently we tried to find out the John C. Calhoun conditions and reach out to GDOT. And since this is such an old project, my understanding is the design process started in the 60s and construction was done in 5 phases, 71 to 84, all that. So, and GDOT did not have plans handy to look at that, you know, so it's maybe somewhere in the archive. So we're not able to find anything from the GDOT. We also look at the 1965 storm sewer maps. That was the storm sewer separation maps when it was a combined system city has at that time. Those maps are not indicating any drainage or any sewer system at the back of this area. It appears, I'm not sure, it's hard to kind of figure out from those maps, that appears there may be a alley type road system at the back of that time. I think it's a St. Luke Street right now. It's kind of disconnected, so that may be running at the back. But there was no defined system, at least on those maps, on that. There is a 60-inch brick sewer that was running the house next to this house in 1912, the one in 1914 on that. The construction of the John C. Calhoun did included its concrete drainage ditch at the back of this block. So that ditch drains from both ends toward the middle, and then there is storm structure in the middle that also draining into a sewer system, which we were not able to verify previously when I was here at this floor, but since then we did verify, and that is a functional system. It does drain into the existing system. Since the first time it came up here, engineering is maintaining that ditch and appeared to be functional. Is actually we included as a part of our John C. Calhoun, the maintenance, ongoing maintenance, what we do. So really, I don't have anything add to what we already discussed.
Okay.
Well, can I ask a question? Doc, I went up the other day, so I can't speak about the system, you know more about that. But I went to one of the properties and went in their backyard and saw, as a matter of fact, and I went around to also on John C. Calhoun Highway, and I looked down, so I see how the water can run down here. But I'm gonna call it a ditch, a drainage system. The drainage system that I saw was really no wider than this that I saw. Could be wrong from where I was looking at, and it had a very low lip to keep it from going over into the property. It wasn't like it was extended high and can block it off. It wasn't as tall as even as the monitor here. And so that was probably how I was getting over on those properties. So really, to my colleagues, I put it back on the agenda, because if you look in your books, we put plenty of pictures into the flooding of the properties. We also see that they've been coming down here since 2006. In 2006 of that year, I think it was in September of that year, you might have had 3 residents off Ellis Street come and speak to us. So I'm asking the commission to allow risk management to try to take a look at this and see is this, a damage to those properties. You also saw in one of the, because I didn't put everything in there. I tried to put enough in to get a bird's eye view of what exactly the challenges are here. And you can see also on the Johnson's property there, where they attempted to renew their insurance, and then they filed a claim trying to get the property fixed, I guess, before even coming to the city. But let them know what some challenges were. Then eventually, the company asked them, okay, make these repairs and then come back, and then we can honor the claim. Well, I guess that's where they end up coming down here at that point, that if you didn't have the resources to do that, to fix it first for something that they really didn't do, and they try to get the insurance to do it. As a result of that, they don't have any more insurance on their property up until they can get that situation rectified. So I'm asking the committee, this committee here, to start with this committee here, I'd like to make a motion to at least let risk management take a look at these properties along here and try to see what liability, if any, that we have on this.
Commissioner Hassan, before I add to your motion, do we know whether risk management has ever been to that property in regards to the flooding?
I have no idea.
So,
Ms. Johnson, I mean, they may can answer that. This is Ms. Johnson right front, and Ms. Collins next to her, and Reverend Ivy in the back. All of those 3, those are 3 of the, would that word be plaintiff, Mr. Attorney? Not quite at this point, right?
I think just one's sufficient, I think. Ms. Johnson, has risk management ever been out during one of the flooding incidents?
No.
Was the city ever contacted?
Yes.
And no one ever came?
No.
Okay. Well,
Yes, Malika, question.
Dr. Malik, were you familiar with any of this flooding prior to when they first came to the commission?
No, sir.
Okay.
That's the first time I learned, and that's what we went back and actually, Commissioner Jordan Johnson got us involved to clean up that whole area, and we did that, and since then we're maintaining it.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm really, it's disappointing that Ms. Johnson, Ms. Collins, and everyone else, Reverend Ivy, has to keep coming back for this issue, especially we're talking 15 years. When they came back before us in April, we talked about needing a big infrastructure project in this area. Does that do you remember that?
Yes, sir. And that
we said something around the tune of a $2 million infrastructure project that would alleviate this issue. Is that and we said we were identifying funding. Is that what we were talking about still? something along those lines? You don't have to answer. So, because I don't want to go down that route right now. But what I do want to ask is, when we got done with the meeting, we went into the direction was to make sure, not the direction, I'm just going to say we strongly suggested that you work with the family to get risk management involved. Have they been involved? You said not to your knowledge, they have not been involved yet in this conversation?
I'm not sure about that, but personally, I've been involved. I've been on this side when it was pouring down 2 inches of rain that evening. It was 6 p.m. I walked the ditch, I watched it. So, back to Commissioner's response, the ditch was flowing half full and structure was functioning, all that. So,
and I don't question that at all, Dr. Malik. What I want to get to the understanding before, because I don't want Ms. Johnson or Ms. Collins or Michelle, I don't want them coming back down here at all. What I want to get to the bottom of is what is causing these issues. When it rains, it pours in their yards. Ms. Collins' backyard is messed up under the house. The kitchen is off. The back porch is off. When it rains, we're going to have these issues. So what is the issue? What is causing the issue? And all I'm really concerned about is what is the plan to help this situation? Because if we don't come up with some type of plan from this body today, they're going to be back 6 months from now. They'll be back 15 years from now. What is the cause? We know that DOT plays a role. What role does DOT play in this, or what should they play? And then what's the plan? That's all I want to know to be comfortable with sending this family back to Harrisburg to deal with their situation. What is the plan?
So it's a twofold question. So what I observe right now is on-site drainage, which is private issue. Secondly, what we're planning to do is really tied to the funding. And the plan is there, but we got several issues, several flooding areas which engineering is working through based on what the resources are theirs. So we'll get there, but there's immediately we did not started that project because the funding is limited every year what we can do.
Okay. So what I would suggest, and I'm going to just echo Commissioner Hassan, he made a motion. I think he has to make it again before I can second the motion. But risk management definitely needs to be involved in this conversation because if I'm not mistaken, it's not just Ms. Johnson and Ms. Collins' property. It's a couple houses down that street all the way back to Reverend Ivy's church. So we need to have risk involved in this conversation as well. So Commissioner Hassan, I'm sure will make his motion again. I'll second it. But you did say that you have a plan for this? There is a plan to rectify this situation? If there's a plan, can you submit it to the committee or to the commission?
For engineering?
Yes.
No, sir. Plan is to keep maintaining the ditch at this point. The plans to the future, we got to look at this overall basin when the funding become available, and that's like East Augusta. We've been working on that. It's almost 15, 16 years now. So it takes time to get through. When you're looking at this as a neighborhood or sub-basin level, it's going to take time to get there. So.
I agree. But East Augusta is in like its 6th phase right now.
Yeah.
So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Hassan?
Yeah, the motion, I think, was to allow risk management to take a look at this and see what they come up with in terms of the several properties there, to take a look at that and get back with us by way of legal or what have, and give us their findings of what potentially could be up against, so we find the city can give these families some relief on their properties.
Second.
Mayor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think what I heard is that, and the questions have been certainly appropriate, I'm concerned when I hear what I've heard. Just several years ago, we implemented what we call the Stormwater Management Program. So I need to understand how this is a resource conversation when we've got the Stormwater Management Program. I need clarification on that.
Director Malik.
Yes, sir. So engineering been on this floor and presenting updates frequently, what their program meant, where the money is going, so we've been very transparent. So there is around $5.5 million that goes into the actual work, and that's primarily is for the maintenance. And that program was really created to help the maintenance of the infrastructure, not the new infrastructure, and that's what the SPLOST comes into play. We have a concern the way SPLOST aid is distributed. So all the money is allocated at the tail end. So it's not that much money allocated at the front end to the drainage, all that. And actually, engineering came back to the commission and kind of reallocated some of the money for this year to finish up what was already in that. And I'd be more than happy to bring back again where the money going.
I think this body decides what we bond first and what we bond second. So, again, if it's a resource allocation issue, and so I see two issues. I see the understanding of how we use those resources and when, but I also see the challenge of priority. What I'm hearing is that we've got a consistent conversation going on over here, and it's not new, and yet we have resources. That's what I heard. So this is a matter of priority. And again, I'm not hearing anyone say we're going to make this a priority, which is what she's asking for.
True.
Well, Mayor.
Yeah.
Dr. Malik tried bringing this up in regards to restructuring how the allocations were going to take place with SPLOST State, and there was many issues brought forward from the administration office, as well as just not fully understanding, that he was trying to prioritize some of these projects, move them to the front. So, as you said, I think there's definitely the need for this conversation, and I would urge Dr. Malik to bring that back to us to help us fully understand the need as well as the urgency for that. And Ms. Bonner, I think there is a motion with a second, so
yes, sir.
Voting on that. Ms. Johnson, did you have any more?
Yes. It sounds like nothing y'all saying hardly makes sense, to tell you the truth. Because this not only affecting the expressway, but I live in this house. The concrete slab on the front porch has cracked. The column posts on the front is leaning and about almost off the house. The slabs under the house is separating from the fireplaces. The floors are buckling on the inside of the house.
Well, ma'am, and that's the reason that we wanted risk management involved with this, was to come take a look.
But the way y'all talking and the timing, my insurance has expired. They won't give me no insurance on the house, but they'll give me some insurance on the balance on the loan of the house. Now, if something else happens, where did that leave me? I hear what y'all saying, but it don't make no sense.
Mr. Chairman.
Mayor.
If I may, the commissioner from the 6th, he made a motion that's been a proper second. And I think what I heard was have risk management come out. What I'd like to hear is risk management is going to come out tomorrow. And they're going to go out there and assess. And they're going to provide her with an analysis of what's going on. And then they're going to come back to this body. And on Tuesday, you're going to make a decision about what support and help. And if that means we have to go to the parliamentarian, i.e. general counsel, to find out what needs to take place, then we need to do that. Because she's got settling, which is leading to the buckling and the walls. This ain't a cavitation, this is a settling issue.
It's true.
Okay, and we need to resolve it. So, risk
Commissioner-
management's going,
Commissioner Hassan, if you would rescind your motion and add to that time frame, I think that would help expedite. Yes, sir.
Just remember, it's not just Ms. Johnson's house, there's several houses there, all the way down to the Reverend Ives Church, if I'm not mistaken, from her property all the way to, and look, so if possible, next Tuesday, give us an update of where they actually are and what do they recommend, per risk management, looking into this.
So you're just amending that motion, you accept, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And do we have a list of those properties, those numbers from Ms. Johnson, Ms. Collins, all of those properties? If we don't, if Dr. Malik doesn't have those property numbers, those addresses, can we get those addresses to him as well?
Well, he's not risk
Yes.
Well, risk management, I'm sorry, risk
Well,
management.
Ms. Johnson, Ms. Collins, and three of the five, I
We can
think
get
is
that to
here
them. Okay.
right now. We voting?
Voting, Ms. Bonner?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson.
Who we're waiting on? It's unanimous.
All right, and next item, can I get a motion for this as
So moved.
Second.
Not anybody.
Did we get a proper second?
Yes, sir, we did.
Okay.
Second.
We did.
Voting, Ms. Bonner?
Okay. It's unanimous.
And if there is no further business, engineering comes to an end.
Mr. Dennis Williams, you're up.
All right. I'd like to call the order of the Finance Committee. Madam Clerk, are there any additions or deletions?
No, sir.
If my colleagues would agree, I'd like to consent item number 1.
Second.
Go ahead and cast your vote.
It's unanimous.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, number 2.
Item number 2 is a presentation by Mr. Morris Porter, Vice President of the Augusta Richmond County Public Library System Board of Trustees regarding Augusta Richmond County Public Library System budget and balance.
Okay,
I don't see him.
him in the room. Is there a representative? Being none, could we just add this on to the next agenda?
Is the next committee, sir?
Committee cycle, yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Any objections? Do we need to vote on the matter, clerk?
No, we can do it without objection.
Okay. Being that's the last item on the agenda for business, that concludes finance services. Thank you. Have a great day.
okay, before everyone departs, we do have a matter that's still before us. And that is the matter of the special call meeting to address the millage rate. Okay?
I thought we did it.
That's a question.
Chair recognizes. Chair recognizes Commissioner from Zeta.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question for the attorney. On a matter like this, does the public have to see the rates publicized before we can vote of them at least 24 hours in advance? So we're not voting today then? Oh. Okay. Okay. Well, why would we not stuck this? Yeah, but why is it on a special call meeting? It should have been on a regular commission agenda. A special call to something we're voting on to move forward on. That's what doesn't make sense, I guess. Why don't you state that so people hear you for the public?
It depends on the timing of the various committee and commission meeting cycles. It normally, from start to finish, requires 2 weeks, and I'll get into this, from the beginning of the process that starts with the advertisement, which happens after today. Because y'all's meetings are every other week, it doesn't fit neatly within that 14-day process when it takes more than 14 days after you get it into the advertising process. So this is just the beginning.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Director Williams, if you would proceed with the presentation.
I am and trying to find which. There. All right, so good afternoon. As I just stated, this is the very beginning of the 2022 millage rate process. The whole process is prescribed in great detail by the state of Georgia Department of Revenue, and we are required, like every other governing body in the state of Georgia, to adhere to their timeline and their process. The first thing that happens is that once the proposed rates are agreed upon by this governing body, then we would be required to publish what is commonly called the 5-year history of the digest in the newspaper. And that officially starts the process, which would trigger any public notices and would trigger any hearings should they be needed. The second part of the process is that each governing body is required to compute a rollback millage rate in a formula, once again, prescribed by the state, which is essentially the previous year's millage rate minus the equivalent of any growth from reassessment. In years where there is not a good bit of reassessment, that change is usually fairly minimal. In years of a large change to the digest, primarily due to reassessment, that rollback computation can be quite substantial and have an impact that causes a little bit of heartburn to us finance people. So, but at the end of the day, if the proposed rate is higher, even by 1/1000th of a mil, by this computed rollback rate, then it triggers another set of actions that we have to go through. This would be what the 5-year history with the digest would look like once we dropped in the computed rollback rate. Down at the far right, I don't know if I can, yeah, there, right here. 7.986 would be the computed rollback rate if once we drop the digest numbers and the exemptions and figure the amount of reassessment equivalent to the millage rate. Last year the rate was 9.045 and the rollback rate computed this year would be the 7.9. Now this looks pretty good, right? It tells you, according to this formula, that using that rollback rate on this digest would give the government another $1.3 million. So far, it looks pretty good. Why isn't that an accurate picture of what really will happen to us with the rollback rate? That is because this computation assumes a 100% collection rate. Everybody that gets a bill pays 100% of their bill on time this year. It's a little unrealistic. It also does not reflect the reduction to revenue that Augusta has put in place through their early payment discount. That is the equivalent of almost $500,000.
Director Williams?
Yes, sir.
What is our collection rate?
Over time, it approaches 99%.
What
That
does
is
that mean?
not the first year. For budgeting purposes, and I'll go through, we budget at 98%. Augusta also has 3 tax allocation districts. So any collections related to those tax allocation districts, the equivalent of those, the incremental taxes in those is required to be transferred out and back into those tax allocation districts. That money is already spoken for. This is a picture of what it would look like once you take into those 3 considerations that I just noted. So there's the $1.2 million that was on the slide previously.
Director Williams?
Yes, sir?
Would you go back to the previous slide?
Yes, sir.
And as you note, not that one, the one succeeding that one, yes. You indicate that Augusta has 3 TADs and approximately 681 is moved from tax collections. Could you explain to this body why that is and the benefit of that? Because I don't want them to perceive that as money's going away. There's an inherent benefit
Right.
to TADs that we have, and there's a reason why they exist.
Yes, sir. They are beneficial, and I did not mean to infer that that was not a good thing. I was just using it as an example for the math of why the revenue collections are a little bit lower than what is stated. Okay, I'm getting there.
Okay.
I'm getting there.
Because you don't want people to perceive that there's a reduction in revenue. There's a corresponding benefit.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
When you enter into a tax allocation district, you pledge the increased tax collections from that district to go back towards the cost of developing that district. That is a part, and that's about as simple as I can make it, and hopefully that helps. Okay? So there is benefit from TAD, but at the same time, a portion of your tax collections are already identified with a specific use. That was the point I was trying to get to. So when you apply this math to the number that you have already seen before, the $1.2 million that the state ad says that you get from using the rollback rate, if you turn that into a 98% collection rate, we have already, that's $49 million. We have budgeted $48.5. So at this point in the game, we're still slightly ahead. However, you still have to take into account the reduced collections because of the early payment discount, which is approximately $450,000. That's at last year's rate. It can vary depending on how many taxpayers decide to take advantage of that discount. Then there's the allocation to the TAD district, and using the rollback rate places us approximately $500,000 below the budgeted level of revenue that we approved back in November. So, if the governing body adopts a rate that is in any way different than the rollback rate, it triggers 3 public hearings and press release and what is called a notice of intent to increase property taxes. This would be the timeline should Augusta go through that process. Today, August the 9th, you would set a proposed rate. That's officially sets in motion what the governing body says that they may adopt. These are the proposed rates. Anytime a proposed rate is put out there, between then and the approval date, which would be on August the 30th, the commission can lower a proposed rate. You cannot go up on a proposed rate without restarting the process at its beginning. So, if the commission sets the proposed rates today, the required 5-year history with those proposed rates. Am I okay, or, okay? Would appear in the newspaper. That starts the official calendar for the minimum of the 2-week cycle. You would put forth a notice of when public hearings would be had, the first 2, and then you would hold those hearings. The suggestion is on August the 22nd. There has to be a prescribed amount of time between the hearings and between each part of the process. On August the 22nd, both those hearings would be held. One is required to start before noon, the other were at 6 p.m. or later. And then you would also advertise that third meeting. The third meeting must be advertised at least 7 days prior to the date that you hold the third meeting, which can also be the date that you adopt the mill rates. That adoption date, if you adopt this schedule, would be August the 30th. The tax commissioner has relayed to us that this is approximately the last date that they can use in order to get the bills out in a timely manner. So, this is the crux of the matter here. These are the proposed rates that are being recommended today. For the general fund, 8.411. For urban services, capital outlay, and the Blythe Fire District would be, the recommended rates would be the same rate as in 2021. And for the fire protection, we are proposing a 1/4 of a mil increase from the 2021 rate. Just hang on a minute, I'm getting there. Let me run through the tax cap with you for just a minute. There's a formula that was adopted, historically, and it came into effect in 1979. It sets a tax cap for each of the 3 taxing districts, the millage rates that you have: the general fund, urban services, and fire protection. Urban services and fire protection typically have there are no limitations by their tax cap, nor have we ever approached that cap. We have flirted with it a time or two in the general fund, but with the proposed rate for 2022, there would be no difference between the total millage rate and the total tax cap. Let me explain that in just a second. The tax cap changes every year. It is a computation that has a base rate and then a fraction, which is comprised of the prior year digest and the current year digest. Very simply put, if the current year's digest is larger than the digest of the prior year, the tax cap goes down. How fast it goes down depends on how big the change in the digest is. If there's a little bitty change from one year to the next, the tax cap moves a tiny, tiny little bit. If there is a big swing in the digest from one year to the next, the tax cap changes pretty drastically. For example, in 2021, the countywide millage rate was 1.5 mils below the tax cap. Tax cap in 2021 was 17.236. This year, the tax cap is 15.21. The change in the digest caused the tax cap to decrease by over 2 mils. Sales tax collections make up some of the room between 0 and where the tax cap is. This year, the sales tax collections took up more of the available millage rate, a little over 1/10. This is a bunch of words, so this illustration may help. 2021, as I said, the tax cap was 17.236 mils. In 2022, it's only 15.21 mils. Starting at the bottom, you've got the capital outlay millage rate, 0.722. You add on to that the sales tax credit. This is your local option sales tax. It has nothing to do with SPLOST. Local option sales tax are a required rollback on the millage rate for your property taxes. So in 2021, that computed amount was 5.966 mils. The sales tax credit for 2022 is slightly larger, a little over 6 mils. In 2021, the net mill rate was 9.045. That still left you 1.5 mils below the cap of 17.236. In 2022, even by levying a lower millage rate than what was done in 2022, the proposed rate is 8.411. It puts you at the 15.21. So it leaves you no room, primarily because, simply put, the ceiling is lower. You just don't have the same amount of room up under the tax cap. Why fire protection a recommended increase? It's a difficult conversation. $14.6 million is needed for equipment replacement over the next 3 years. For the first time in SPLOST, there was no funding allocation for fire equipment. In SPLOST 7, there was $6 million that got them through their half of their equipment needs. The rest comes out of their general operation millage rate. That's how fire protection is funded. Fire revenue comes from two places. It comes from the ad valorem tax collections, and it comes from insurance premium taxes that come straight from the state. The control of the revenue, the piece that this body has control of is the ad valorem tax collection rate. If an additional 0.25 mils, a quarter of a mil, was added to the 2021 fire protection millage rate, it would generate approximately $2.3 million to begin to offset the equipment needs for fire protection.
Mayor, can I ask a question while we're talking about fire?
I would like for you to ask a series of questions.
You know you don't want to open that up.
The floor is yours.
Actually, this question is for the fire chief, if that's okay. And before we get to you, Chief, if we do this rate for the fire protection as you're suggesting, how much additional will that bring in per year for fire? Will it get them their 14.6 for the 3 years?
Won't quite get them there. That's the additional quarter of a mil plus that the digest growth that we have seen this year. For 2022, will bring in $2.3 million.
Gotcha.
That should be ongoing, but it's still obviously a little short of the 14.6.
And Chief, so
Yes, sir.
I'm sure that you've been part of this process of getting here, and you know we're hearing about the equipment failures and all of that, and that was all pre you. So, is this increase specifically for the equipment, or is it for the 4th Battalion that's being discussed about adding that 4th Battalion?
I'd say a little bit of both, Commissioner. As you're aware, when it comes to the capital needs of the department, fire trucks being the second largest of those capital needs. And as you're also aware, fire trucks and vehicles and equipment, those apparatuses were not part of SPLOST 8.
Understood.
which left us no funding mechanism for those vehicles.
But in regards to adding that 4th battalion, which is, traditionally going to add about 300,000 to 400,000 extra to your budget needs per year, do you think it's time to do that, especially with the equipment problems that you're experiencing, or should that be something that we consider pushing for a more robust conversation in the future than trying to implement it this way?
No, I definitely think it's time, Commissioner. I think we're overdue in adding those resources and that critical oversight to the department. I think it's something that should have been in place quite some time ago.
And once again, I mean, it all comes back to the conversations, and when we're finding out about these conversations, not from you, that's a little shocking. But anyway, that's beside the point. But I just wanted to make sure that I was tracking, because I kind of assumed that was going to be part of this increase. Administrator, I think you had a question for me.
Commissioner, the Administrator's Office nor the Finance Department has had conversations with the fire chief concerning this increase. As you know, it is proposed, but it is our recommendation, my recommendation as the interim administrator, that these dollars go towards his capital needs, particularly his equipment.
And is there a way to specifically specify that?
Yes, sir.
Yes, there is.
Okay, thank you.
And the point.
Excuse me, I have a question, Mr. Mayor. Who's it? Okay, thank you. I think what I just heard, though, is going to put him back in the box. You see, make it just for capital needs. If he is saying to us that it's not something that he just want to haphazardly do, he's something that is something that should have been done. And if we got opportunity to do it, we'll allow him to do it, and not just try to make sure it be for capital need. He say he need both, both of those things to happen simultaneously. If this enhancement here will allow him to do that, I think we should allow him to fully function and do that. Now, if I misunderstood what you were saying, I completely apologize. Because I think I was half asleep and woke up.
Well, and Commissioner Hassan, I think that, to your point, I think that is a discussion that we should be having during the budget process, as we're talking about adding positions and things like that. I think that's part of the bigger conversation I was hoping that was going to take place.
It absolutely will take place, because you will make sure it does.
Yes, sir.
And I'll help you with that.
To expound on that, the fire department's operational needs are funded this year. They are fully funded. His capital needs are not. So hence the suggestion to designate this towards capital. And this is not a new approach. Those of you who've been around or watching this, we actually did this some years ago. We levied an additional $250,000 for capital replacement. However, with the expansion and new stations getting added on and new personnel added, eventually that ate up those resources, but there were resources in SPLOST that took care of the fire department's capital needs. Those resources are not available throughout SPLOST 8. You're looking at a long period of time without any designated funding to help buy equipment. And fire equipment, technically, it's not cheap.
Administrator Dowse.
Commissioners, I also wanted to just add to this point that the fire department's operational needs for this year are budgeted. So concerning the additional battalion, those needs are already taken care of. And of course, we are entering into planning for fiscal year 23, in which those operational needs would be covered at that time.
I was going to say something, but it would start a fight. So I won't do it.
As long as I'm not in it. Okay, this is a slide that I guess everybody probably wants to see. What happens to the $100,000 house if we go through with the proposed millage rates that have been recommended? So if your $100,000 house stayed a $100,000 house, and it's not on this slide, if you were one of those people that your property value did not increase, you can go, yay, my property value did not increase, but at the same time, if you go to sell your house, you're going to be a little bit on the short side. If your $100,000 house stayed at a $100,000 house, your taxes would go down about $20. If your $100,000 house increased in value approximately 18%, which is, I think, the rough average that I got from the tax assessor was somewhere between 16 and 18. That seemed to be a comfortable number to use. That $100,000 house is now worth a $118,000 house. At 40% of its assessed value, that's $47,200, less your homestead exemption, which in Richmond County, for the normal homestead exemption is $5,000. So that gives you $42,200 for your taxable value of your house. You go through the scenario in your suburban district in 2021, you paid $410,000. Lord, excuse me. $410 on that $100,000 house. With the proposed rates from 2022 in the suburban district on the $118,000 house, the tax bill would be $478. It's an increase of $68, or something just below, what, $6, $7 a month. So, a couple gallons of gas a month, depending on where gas is right now. I used to use a gallon of milk, but it fluctuates kind of like gas, to tell you the truth. But that would be the difference applying each one of the millage rates that I've proposed. $68 in the suburban district on that now $118,000 house, or in the urban service district, it would be $78 on that same $118,000 house that last year was the $100,000 house. So those are the recommendations. This would be the action, if you choose to do so, is to approve the proposed rates. Remember, step one, this is just the proposal. This triggers the advertisement, and this starts the process.
So, oh, I'm sorry, I think Freeman was first.
Yes, I was going to go to the commissioner from the 7th, and then the 1st, and I'll come back to the 8th, okay?
Yeah, and first off, like the screen, when we first, this is why I asked the question that we weren't voting today, and then I don't know why this is on the screen, because we said we weren't voting, and I think that's why my colleague left, because we said we weren't voting today. So let me first say that. Ms. Williams, the fire revenue is $2.3 million. What is the increase, tax increase for the general fund revenue when we go from 7.98 to 8.411? What is the increase in general fund dollars?
Above the budget is not I've not calculated an increase from the 7.9, because 7.9 puts us behind the 8 ball. As I said, that puts us $500,000 short of your budget. But if you use the 8.4, you would generate approximately $2.1 million over your revenue budget that has been set for ad valorem taxes.
Did you have a comment? No.
I'm going to hold it here.
Okay.
I'm going to come back to it.
All right. So in the proposed $2.1 million tax increase for the general fund, 2.3 into the fire. Blythe, as far as that increase, they know that we're good, all that. We can do that with the increase in Blythe from the 2.6 to the 3.2.
Set the millage rate for fire protection for Blythe, and it is separate from the regular fire protection millage rate because they get a direct allocation of insurance premium tax.
Okay. And then as far as the sales tax credit, we're at the cap at that 6.077.
That's not a cap, sir. That's just a computation of the actual amount of sales tax that we received in 2021.
Okay.
Turned into a millage rate.
That's a perfect answer because we continue to talk about how our sales tax revenue is up. And my question is, can we not increase that, or does that need to stay where it's at?
It's a mathematical computation that it cannot change.
Okay, and that's
a sales tax credit. That is the collections divided by the digest equals the rate.
okay. So based on what the rollback is versus what the recommended millage rate is, how much are we short in the general fund budget if we go with the rollback rate? $500,000. Okay. And I think this is, and we still haven't talked about street lights. We still haven't talked about, I think compensation study was something this government wanted to talk about from a budgetary standpoint. We still hadn't talked about parks and recs and their needs. We talked last week about how well, from a sales tax revenue, the American Rescue Funds where we got $86 million, the stormwater fee and we've got money. Like, I think that I would hope that this body would have this conversation about where we can find $500,000 before we just go and approve in something where there's a $2 million or $1.5 million surplus. When you look at all this money that we've been taking in, and people are hurting. So I would hope we get to have those conversations before we finally approve this, because based on my conversation with Scott, 65% of the homeowners in Richmond County increased their property values. So that's a tax increase for 65% of Richmond County, and they all need to know that. And I just think at this time, for what we've done, how well we've been good stewards of this money, how well we've gotten all these other revenue sources coming in, that we really need to look at what we can sharpen the pencil on our end before we go on approving a recommended rate that's going to put more on the taxpayers. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner from the first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And that really leads into the question that I have. I mean, an extra couple cent could really put people in really tough shape financially. I understand that we have a fiduciary responsibility for the government, but we also have it for the taxpayers as well. I know we have things to cover, but it's difficult sometimes to kind of face that, one-on-one, being that you got so many people that may be in hard positions if we went certain routes. So the only question that I have, I'm comprehending where we're going. The only question that I have is what can be done to help the senior citizen in whatever neighborhood that cannot afford an extra, $60 or extra $7 a month or whatever the case. What can we do from a policy perspective to help that senior, or just to help that general person as well? I know we showed on the presentation, a homestead exemption, but that's granted they're at the age to get it. So okay, can you help me understand this?
I'm sorry, the $5,000 homestead exemption is available to anyone.
Okay.
There are probably 17 or 18 other types of exemptions that are available. Over 65, help me, Ms. Dowse, you worked in tax commissioner's office. There's double exemption, $10,000. Anybody over 65 pays no school board taxes at all, which is 75% of their tax bill.
Is that automatic, or do they have to apply for it?
You just go in and
you have to apply.
show them
Okay.
your birth certificate and file for it.
Okay.
It's a painless process. There's the early payment discount that we mentioned, which all mortgage companies are required to do that. If you have an escrow account and pay, and it pays your taxes for you, they are required to take advantage of that early payment discount. There are veterans exemptions. There are exemptions for disabled. I would not begin to dive much further down in that.
Yeah, I'm all for doing what's best for the city, of course, but I hope that in the future we'll be able to kind of look, and definitely I'm going to direct this way to Scott as well, because you're going to have to be instrumental here as well, is that we need to be looking at ways to kind of help those seniors who are on fixed incomes. I mean, when the value went up in Sand Hills, my phone rang the entire week. So much so we had to have a special town hall up there just to kind of get folks to understand what's going on. That's little apples to oranges a little bit, but I just want us to be thinking along those lines. And that was really just the only question. I don't need to go any further than that.
And it's,
thank you.
So I think
about $500,000 On consent, just a few minutes ago, your medical contract for your prisoners at the jail went up $500,000. So not only are you looking at that $500,000 that you may be short here, is you're widening the gap possibly with your expenditures. You've got to be able to provide the resources to do what you guys want to get done. We hear, you know, all the projects require resources.
Director Williams, I think this body understands that projects require resources. We just had a conversation with the fire chief. Prior to the fire chief, we had a conversation with Director Malik about resources versus priorities. I don't think that's the issue. The challenge for this body right now is this is a conversation that we should have known we were going to have last week, and we knew we were going to have it. And now we're having it in a special call meeting where initially we said, well, we're not going to vote on anything, but we're going to vote on something because you want us to, you need us to. And my challenge, my frustration right now in all candor is how we're articulating this $500,000 shortfall.
Yes.
And the reality of it is, if you go back to page 6, slide 6 of your presentation, how you're trying to articulate that is just not.
There's a lot of hand here, sir.
I didn't say you were. Let me. What you'll never have to worry about is me saying sleight of hand, because I'm just going to come out and say it. I think y'all know that by now in my 8 years. I'm trying to walk into it gracefully from the standpoint of we're not telling the full story. I mean, the reality of it is you got $450,000 because you're incentivizing people to pay their taxes. Okay? The second piece is we're encouraging people to make investments and redeveloping in our city, which is why you have 3 TADs. And because of that, here's the benefit. And there's, for lack of another word, it's late in the afternoon, my eyes are hurting. There's a trade-off to that. And so to suggest, well, you know, we're in the hole because, you know, the money's just not there, that's not true.
That slide is intended to represent the money that is collected after the various things happen versus what you budgeted. There's no economic impact built into it. It's just hard dollar collections shown on that slide.
Yeah, but we're sitting here for the Tina Slindacks and Alan Wiles and Garnett Lewis's, or whatever his name is, Gardell Lewis's of the world, who, you know, sit and write these silly things. You know, they're paying attention to this and saying, you know, you guys are just mismanaging, misappropriating dollars, and that's not true because they hear a piece without telling the full story. And until January 2nd, I'm gonna just encourage everybody, tell the full story. Tell the full story that there's a hotel right over here called the Holiday Inn Express. That's in the TAD. That was renovated when it was a dump. And now you got a valuable piece of property over there because of this. You go down the street, and I can talk about $350 million worth of investments. Tell the full story. I'm on your team. We're on the same team. Just tell the full story. Commissioner from the 8th and the Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. This might be the first time in our 4-year history working together that I agree wholeheartedly with you. You know, I tell people all the time, we have to tell our story. And when we're getting slides like this that tell a story, I know that you're just trying to, you know, you're a numbers person, so I think I kind of understand why you tell the story the way that you do. But when it comes to us, and when you know, like the folks that the mayor mentioned that are watching this and that will see these slides, that'll copy them, and then they're going to share them on social media. You've got the news out here, you know, reporting on what's being said up here. all they're hearing is tax increase, tax increase, tax increase. Augusta's wasting money. Augusta's wasting money. That's not what is taking place here. And, you know, until we're able to tell the entire story, like the tax cap, nobody has mentioned at all today that Augusta, Georgia is the only entity in the state of Georgia that has a tax cap that's imposed on us. It's been imposed on us since 1979. It has, I said 79. Oh, 70? Whatever. I wasn't born then. So, but the fact that we have to operate under that thumb that's continually pressing down on any opportunity that we have to help grow and sustain, you know, that is the story that we need to be telling. That most of our citizens don't understand that. They don't see it. You know, people ask all the time, how is Columbus able to catch up with Augusta? Guess what? They're not operating under a tax cap. How is all these cities around Atlanta growing and busting at the seams? They're not operating under a tax cap. Nothing's holding them back. And so until our state hears from us that we need to remove that and to actually work towards, you know, getting our community to fully understand that that is one of the things that is holding us back, we're not telling the full story. But when you're talking about this, when you're throwing out the full rollback and then you're saying, well, but here's the proposed, and if we do the proposed, which is going to provide the services that we need, it's going to be a tax increase. So I need you to make a decision on that today so we can stay on some preconceived schedule that we found out about when you started giving this presentation. I'm sorry, that's unfair to us. It's unfair to us because we have to answer the questions to the citizens. You're not getting those calls. So I think there's a much more robust conversation that we have to have in regards to all of this.
Administrator Dowse, and then the Mayor Pro Tem is going to close us out, and he's going to passionately make a motion.
Commissioners, please keep in mind that today's request is for you to approve the proposed rates, and with that will be additional public hearings, as well as if the commissioners are requesting information from the Finance Department or even the Administrator's Office prior to August 30th, we'll be more than happy to give you that information. But this request today is a requirement for the information, the 5-year history, to be advertised, which will in fact assist with keeping us on schedule with the Tax Commissioner's Office.
And the Mayor Pro Tem will take the slide that's in front of him and passionately ask a series of questions, followed by a passionate motion.
Yeah, I'm just gonna pick up where Commissioner Garrett, what did you call it, a frequency? What is it called? I was trying to figure out what is a frequency. You don't know. Don't worry about it. A frankincense. Oh, okay. Oh,
those are
don't
gears.
laugh at me. Don't laugh at me.
No.
Ms. Williams, you don't know which way to go because people are talking about tax increases, rollbacks, tax caps, all that kind of stuff. I'm just going to make a general statement in general. We here in Augusta, we always talk about what everybody else is doing, and we say we need to catch up. No, they're trying to catch up to us because, you know, somebody mentioned to me, North Augusta, they're building something they were building over there. We already have one of those things. What is it, amphitheater? We already have one. We just need to improve it. We're doing a lot of stuff. We're doing roads, and we're talking about the fire and the fire stations, their equipment, and what have you. We look at what we do at the Commons on Sunday, and go out there and we enjoy ourselves, and we have a good time. But those things cost money. And what some of us don't realize is that you have to pay taxes. And sometimes taxes may be increased. You're talking about your recommended tax reform or whatever it is that we're going to vote on in a minute. My thing is that when I leave my subdivision and go down the roads in Richmond County, I don't want to see blight. I want to see improvements. I want to see new buildings. I want to see Augusta growing. And some of us don't understand that Augusta can't grow if we stay in the same, road lane. If we don't increase taxes from time to time, because there will be time when you need to increase, and sometimes when you want to give the people a little money back or what have you. I guess you call that a rollback or something. We had people in here, they were mad because they had to pay so much taxes on the homes and what have you, and she's gonna get me, but had a young lady in here a week or so ago talked about her taxes being so much, and then they came out to the house to take a look at it. The taxes increased by $300 because she didn't realize that she had made a lot of improvements and they didn't know about the improvements. I said all of this to say that sometimes if you want something worthwhile, you're going to have to pay something for it. Whether you roll it back, whether you increase it, whether you stay the same, taxes are necessary. And so I don't really want to hear about North Augusta, Columbia County, Burke County, all those other folks. I want to see what we're doing in Augusta, Georgia, because Augusta, Georgia is dear to my heart. We need to make the improvements. We need to get up off our tails as commissioners and make the vote that we need to make in order to make this go, because Augusta's number one, and we should treat it that way. With that said, would you like to say anything to me, Ms. Williams? You got anything? They all questioned you out and everything? I'm gonna make the motion. Is this what it is in front of me today?
Yes,
A
sir.
motion to approve proposed 2022 mill rates for each taxing district. Advertise the required 5-year history of the digest and to schedule the date of August 30th, 2022 for the meeting to adopt the rates proposed.
Point of clarity.
State inquiry.
Point of clarity.
Is this for the recommended rates, voting for the recommended rates of 2022? Is that what this vote is? Okay. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a substitute motion.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion for the calculated rollback rates in the middle of the one that we saw on slide 9 in the middle that makes it flat, no tax increase for the taxpayers. Thank you.
Second.
All right, I got a motion with a proper second. Voting. A substitute, rather. Substitute motion with proper second.
Okay.
You can do it. I'm not. I'm ready.
Push the button. Push the button.
That motion fails 4-5. With Mr. Johnson voting no, Mr. Dennis Williams, Mr. Bobby Williams, Mr. Ben Hassan, and Ms. Francine Scott. Voting no. Voting yes, Ms. McKnight, Mr. Franham, Mr. Garrett, and Mr. Clark. Mr. Mason out.
All right, we're back to the motion as presented. Voting.
Mr. Mayor, can I have a question before you do that?
Commissioner, if you don't mind, let's vote on it.
Okay, great.
Yeah, let's vote on it.
All right, sir.
Yeah, I know. It's
just a proposed. Just proposed. Just proposed.
Yeah, I think everyone understands that this is. I think everyone understands that this is the proposed mill rate, and it's not an adopted rate. There's time to change and decide between now and 30 August. Okay? Between now and 30 August. All right. Voting.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. You did it. Mr. Dennis Williams. Thank you. That motion fails 5-4.
Now, let me talk about what our posture can be. The reality of it is tax bills are going to go out. It's no worries. We've been here before. We had this conversation. As I understand it, if this slides and the vote is on next week, we've still got sufficient enough time to make the tax bills, as well as the public hearings, based on the dates in front of us. Is that not true?
Mm-mm.
Administrator Dowse.
You'll need another special call.
You're correct, Mayor Davis. However, we would have to schedule another special call meeting for the commissioners to vote on this matter, to advertise in a timely fashion.
Well, we could advertise it by Friday that it's going to take place on Tuesday at 2:05.
No, the rates. You gotta advertise the rates in the newspaper.
I understand.
Yeah.
So somewhere between now and
I think if I back, the advertisement needs to appear in the paper no later than Monday for a proposed rate other than the rollback rate. The rollback rate goes through, it shorts the time frame by an entire week.
And if memory doesn't serve me well, tax bills go out at the middle of September. Okay. All right.
Yes, sir. The issue that the tax commissioner and the tax assessor find is that they have to get an appointment with the Department of Revenue to have the digest approved. That is a whole process in and of itself before they can send those bills out. And there is a deadline, August 30th? August the 30th.
September 1.
September the 1st to get that done. Hence us backing up and trying to devise a timeline that would let that happen on time.
Okay. All right. I'm not going to push one way or another. I know we can get this done. Because the conundrum is that you're really concerned about publishing it in the newspaper, which I think has not been done to date, right?
It can.
And, right. That's right. Yeah. So maybe what should have happened is we should have said, let's vote on it so we can publish it in the newspaper. Okay, to that end, yeah, we'll, yeah.
You don't have it, they leave it, right?
We'll have another corresponding action.
Yeah.
We'll get it done. Yeah, we'll get it done. This meeting stands adjourned.